Last night, Dee, I did my homework.
Oh, I'm so glad you
For
did.
Suzy Wrong.
Yep.
Suzy Wrong. Joy Drive with Dee and Warren's film, TV and theatre reviewer.
Suzy Wrong, you're one of the newest organ donators, I believe.
Yeah, I was listening to you guys talk about it, and I kind of realized that I haven't done it, even though in my head I decided, like 2 decades ago that I was going to do it. It just never happened. So I did it, and it literally took me half a minute.
Oh, you beat me. It took me 90 seconds. But, I was 75 of those was looking for my Medicare card, I got to admit.
Yeah.
Pray Away, something we've been looking forward to talking to you about. Can you tell us about it?
Pray Away is a new American documentary now streaming on Netflix that deals with what is known as conversion therapy, a non-scientific and unproven practice of trying to change a person's sexual orientation from gay or bi to heterosexual. The film focuses on its main proponent, an organization known as Exodus, active between the years of 1976 and 2013. We follow several leaders of the group who are no longer believers of those teachings and who are now trying to repair the harm they have caused to others and to themselves. We also meet Jeffrey McCall, who leads a new generation of ex-gays and is presented as the new face of the movement. Needless to say, it is heartbreaking watching him struggle as he tries to convince everyone, including himself, that he is no longer transgender. In fact, the entire film is deeply sad as we watch each of these characters wrestle with demons imposed upon them by the Christian church. These are stories that I believe all of us are familiar with, and it is perhaps the ordinariness of these experiences that make me feel a certain numbness in my response. I know that Dee had a much more intense reaction to Pray Away.
Yeah, that numbness is not something I felt. I found it very moving, and I've watched a lot of documentaries about, the LGBTQIA plus condition and trans issues, but this one really got me, and I don't think, I was raised within the Christian faith, as I said, but, didn't really stick. So I think it was more the just deep sadness for the fact that we are perceived as broken or need fixing. And the thing that really got me, and I wonder if this is the thing that you guys pulled out of it also, was that this movement was started by gays who call themselves ex-gays. Like, it is the gays started the movement, which I find, I never thought about it before. There are people that thought that they were broken and so had to fix everybody else. And this is something that gets me about the church itself, is that we have to fix things that we perceive as broken. And I just think this is good to see to the end, because you see the hurt that it's caused and the hurt that it's caused not only the founders of Exodus but also the people that they touched, if you'll pardon the expression.
I found that very conflicting, Dee. I was, wanted to sympathise with the survivors, yet at the same time, all the pain that they caused and the hurt that they caused, I was quite angry towards them, and I found it really hard to reconcile how I was feeling towards them. The amount of pain and probably death that they caused as well. Absolutely.
Suzy, what you say numbness, what was...
Yeah, I think it's information that I know, because it's things that we've grown up with, I believe, I grew up being sent to Sunday school sort of thing because it was like free childcare for a few hours. Not that my parents were deep believers. And so even though I'm not religious by any stretch of the imagination, I know that a lot of the indoctrination really sticks. And, those are things that I learned at 4 or 5 years old, and I feel like it still informs a lot of the way I think about the world and the way I see things, and most of it is good. I embrace a lot of it. Most of it is good, but I also know that when they tell you that you're bad, that you're an abomination, I can see how it sticks on some people, and I hope it doesn't affect the way I do things. But in Pray Away, I can see how it is so much a part of these people's lives, thinking that they are incomplete or they're damaged. And I just feel like it's good to know. It's good to have a reminder that this is still such a big part of our lives, and especially Jeffrey, the guy who to me is so clearly to me is such a clear trans sister, and it breaks my heart to see him try to push it away. And
how did you feel, Suzy? I was thinking of you when you saw a trans woman detransition to a man.
And I feel like ultimately people make their own decisions, and you just have to respect and hope for the best. For the longest time, I kind of always left a little bit of a bit of a room for doubt for this Exodus movement. I felt like, look, if some people are so desperate to change themselves, let them have an avenue. But I guess watching this made me think that, actually, it causes so much harm.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
The things that stood out from me, just from the notes I made when I was watching it, was that link between self-harm and certain Christian movements, like the idea that, people who are involved in a cult or a deeply religious situation, and maybe they have another identity that they're not living their true lives. But self-harm is a massive part of that. Like, that's one thing I can control. I also thought that the fixation of the leaders of the ex-gays on sex in sexuality, like the issues that we in the community deal with aren't all to do with actual sex or but they fixate on masturbation and softball is what seemed to like the fact that they wouldn't let girls play softball because it would make them gay. I mean, true, but still, and also that they would put girls into these young lesbians. Well, you need to do makeup classes, and the boys need to do football. And watching that field full of puffs try and play football was so, and then all those lesbians put on makeup. It was hilarious, and I know it's stereotyping, but it was just gave me such joy to go, you guys are never going to not be gay. And I love you for it.
Doesn't it show, though, Dee and Suzy, the power of belonging? They had this social structure, and even if it is telling you that you're faulty, you don't care. As long as you can belong to something, it didn't matter that organisation was saying that you're wrong.
I love it that they're so...
I like the bit about fellowship. I thought that was really good information to have. They were almost drawn to these groups because they needed the fellowship. They needed to see people who were in the same struggle. So I guess that's some new information there. It's not really... It sometimes looks like they're not really trying to convert themselves. They're just trying to find people to be with.
Well, it was the best place to find gays in your community, I guess. The only place people are gay is at the ex-gay convention and rallies. Those ex-gay rallies that they had would have been an absolute hoot. And they were all, staying in hotels away from their parents for the first time with a whole big bunch of gays. I'm sure much happened there that we don't know about. But we should just say that we're speaking with Suzy Rong out of Sydney, our film, theatre and TV reviewer. The documentary is called Pray Away. I'd highly recommend taking a look at it. It is at times very painful to watch, and but very informative. And I disagree. I mean, I don't disagree, Suzy, but the point you make about I knew this information anyway, I think you can know something and then look at it from another angle, and it's really interesting. The footage is great. I'm surprised, Warren, are you, about how many people stayed within the faith after and then they've got an ex-gay, which is my favourite title for anything, an ex-gay group. So they're gays that became ex-gays and now they're back to gays.
Yeah,
now they have an ex-gay pride march. I just think it is beyond nuts.
And I loved how one of the telltale signs that something was not right was when they said they were at their conference and all the leaders went to bed, and then they were able to be their queer selves in the evening when they were in bed. A couple of things, there's a couple of triggers in there. I think, people claiming that the AIDS pandemic was a punishment for a promiscuous life. That one was dragged out again. Also, I noticed that, in this religious organisation, as soon as you woke up to it or you decided you didn't want to belong or what have you, you were tossed out like garbage completely. So if you're not one of us, you're out. And I thought that was really, really harsh. But there's one question that left me with Dee and Suzy, and that is, why didn't they feel like they could belong to the LGBTIQ community in the first place? Because a lot of them said that. There was that narrative throughout their life that they felt like they didn't belong. And I was just wondering, and this is just a question, were we not as welcoming and perhaps shaming to others who were religious and didn't fit in, and therefore...
Yeah, in recent years, I did develop this idea that, the Christians kind of sometimes they talk to us, well, not just Christians, but sort of really religious people from all kinds of religion background. They seem to think that it's really easy to tell, can you just stop being gay? Can you just stop being lesbian? Can you just stop being trans? And then we think you're absurd, you don't know what you're talking about. But sometimes the way we talk about them, why don't you just leave your religion? Why don't you just, leave it behind you? I think there is a mirror there, and I think it helps with having a bit of compassion to think that maybe it's not that easy. You know, if you grew up with it and you've had generations of that in your family, maybe it's harder than we think.
And maybe that's sort of, I guess, leaves them prone to being picked up by these organisations because they have that desperation to be belong. And I don't know.
I also think, Warren, on that, like the woman who was, the younger woman who was instrumental in Exodus, she just came home from school one day and said to her mum, I think I'm attracted to girls. And her mum's whisked her off to this basically ex-gay cult. She's met 14,000 lesbians within 2 months. Now, she wouldn't have met any lesbians if she was stuck out there on the farm. So her mum's just basically plonked her in the middle of all these repressed lesbians. What did you think was going to happen? I think it's fantastic. I mean, this might have introduced them to, their own people. I think it's terribly sad that they had to go through what they did. And it's not until the final scenes that you really see that dramatic confrontation. Won't give too much away except that it's a great documentary. Suzy, it's a brilliant one to bring to us, and thanks very much.
It's called Pray Away. It's on Netflix. Suzy, what's our homework for next week?
Next week is Dee's choice. It's called Hacks.
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 Yes. Did you watch it at all?
I haven't seen. I saw the trailer, so that I can tell you that it is about a Las Vegas comedy legend trying to inject new blood into her act by working with a Gen Z writer. The unlikely pairing of two vastly different women promises to be a real hoot. All 10 episodes now streaming on Stan.
All 10 episodes were watched by Dee Mason in one day, and I haven't been something like that for a very long time. I think it's wonderful, but. Yeah, it's interesting. Bisexual lead.
Is it funny or is it heartwarming? What
it is both of those things. It isn't in no way educational. It's very interesting. It's got some interesting cultural references and it deals with some tropes in that department. It's got a very strong bisexual lead, which is unusual in film. So in a very popular Netflix commissioned piece. I think you'll love it. It's got age difference. Good.
When will we chat to you next, Suzy?
We'll chat again when I see you next Tuesday.
Thanks, Suzy.